you employ someone with a disability, you get someone for life. You get an employee who's going to be dedicated to you. Like I worked at Health for 12 and a half years. I left Health and I had, I think, about 4 years worth of sick leave. I had about probably 12 months worth of annual leave that, that I hadn't used, all that sort of stuff. And you're also going to get a born problem solver.
Yeah.
Because most of us have solved 15 problems before I've walked out my door.
The Navigating Disability podcast often discusses topics including disability, injury, mental health, and mentions of sensitive issues such as trauma and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care while listening. Welcome to Navigating Disability. Today we're joined by my co-host Jen Abbott and Skye Shannon, a passionate advocate with over 30 years of lived experience. Born with spina bifida and now an amputee, Skye has turned her personal challenges into a mission to create real change. Through her business, she works to make organisations more inclusive and is currently developing an accessible tourism directory for Orange, New South Wales and the Central West. Skye believes in creating tangible solutions to ensure people with disabilities are not just included, but truly valued. We're excited to hear more about her inspiring work. Welcome, Skye. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Having me. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, I'm going to start this conversation with the conversation that we just had 5 minutes ago when we started this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And you said to me, I don't know why you're interviewing me.
Yep.
Well, that's an absolute shock to me because you are an amazing advocate. And yes, I have interviewed some amazing people, but you are just as good as them. So I want to hear your story.
I think that comes from having a disability because a lot of us, and as you guys, as I've said, I was born with spina bifida. I'll start with a story from a couple of days ago, and then I'll come back to that. So I also work for an organisation called Sport for All, which is part of the Dylan Alcott Foundation, and it's about creating inclusive environments within sporting clubs and schools so that everyone has a spot on a sporting field, whatever. Anyway, a couple of days ago, a colleague of mine came up from Penrith and we did a presentation together to a couple of clubs. And the conversation led around, it started around why Dylan started the organisation. And it was purely because growing up, he didn't have access to sport and he had to drive. His parents had to take him 100 k's down the road in order so he could play tennis, whereas his brother could play at the local tennis centre. And I've got it, like, I don't play sport, funnily enough, as an amputee. But I've got a similar story in that my brothers, I've got two younger brothers. We were always, growing up, we were crying out for something to do together. But back in the 80s, there was nothing like that. So I like that sort of organisation and that sort of stuff. And I suppose that sort of led me in the last couple of days on a thought process of why I've come to doing what I'm doing now. So I grew up in a small country town. And I went to a small school, and I think I know there was 4 girls in our year, and I think there was about 16 boys. So it was great. I think the boys had fun at the Year 6 farewell. I think it was great. The Year 6 farewell was fantastic. It was good fun. And like primary school was great. And growing up in a small country town, I didn't see myself as different. I didn't know anyone else that had a disability. Looking back, there was one other guy who lived in the country town that I was in, who used to walk around with a boombox on his shoulder, those big boomboxes that were back in the 80s.
Oh, that's throwing me back.
Yeah, I know, right? So he had a boombox on his shoulder, and I know now that he used the boombox to hide his disability.
Okay.
Because he walked with he had cerebral palsy, so he walked with a bit of a limp. So he used it as a tool.
Skye, can I just interrupt? Did you have any noticeable differences during primary school with the spina bifida? Yeah?
Yeah, I did. I had, it affected my right side, my lower right side. It also affects, internal organs as well. So there was, need for separate bathrooms and that sort of stuff. And I had a 10 centimeter difference between my legs, so I did have a limp. So yes. So at school, primary school was great because I wasn't seen as any different. And I had sporting coaches who I can remember we played minky hockey, which is hockey for primary school age, and there was a broken hockey stick. So the hockey coach snapped it in half, cleaned it up, and gave it to me as a shorter hockey stick, and so that I could play. And just little things like that. And so I didn't know any different when I was in primary school. And I think also I grew up in a family that, my two brothers, we did everything together. Yes, they are younger than me, but we did everything together, from riding motorbikes to, anything that you would do on a farm. So I didn't, in all honesty, didn't see myself as having a disability. I don't think it was until I got to high school that I saw myself as different. I didn't see myself as having a disability when I was in high school, but I saw myself as very, very different.
Were you treated differently?
I was treated differently, both by teachers and by my peers. Girls especially can be very, very cruel at that age. Teenage girls are very, very cruel. And I am so glad that we grew up in an era where, or at least I did, where there was no phones. Yeah. And if you wanted to talk to your friends after school, you had to pick up the phone, and Dad was the one that answered 9 times out of 10. So high school for me was, funnily enough, thinking and going back to the story where I was thinking about, things where I was comfortable back with the Sport for All thing. I think looking back on it, probably the most comfortable times that I had was when I was not at school, when I was actually in Sydney in hospital, and when I was unwell. They were the times where I actually didn't feel different. Whereas at school, I think I can remember like this, I think as a kid, you don't remember much, but I can remember standing around the Hills Hoist at home, arguing with Mum about going back to school the next day.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know what a Hills Hoist is, it's
the washing machine that goes round.
It's a washing line that spins, and you have lots of fun on it. We've had lots of fun on them. God, no, I wish
many a broken line, and the dad coming out going, "What are you doing?"
Exactly. I wish they still existed. But yeah, I think looking back now, because I had a lot of year 9 and year 10, I didn't spend any time at school. I was in Sydney for majority of it, with various serious issues. And the teachers, I'd get back to school and the teachers like, "No, she's here today, she's not going to be here tomorrow." So I think I therefore developed a I don't want to be at school scenario. And I was very glad to leave. And then,
when did you leave? What year?
I left in 1999. So I finished school in 1999. And then I went to Canberra for 12 months. Long story short, got kicked out of uni because, went to a private school, and you don't have many things that you can do when you're in private school. So you get out first year out, and you get a bit of rope, and you hang yourself. Some of us hang ourselves, and I did.
Can I ask you what you did?
I did studied. I did travel and tourism, and kind of figured out it wasn't for me.
Did that lead to whatever occurred for you to leave uni?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. I just didn't want to be there. And I also missed home. Being a country chick, I was not liking the city, and I was wanting to get back to the space and country. But yeah, look, it was 12 months that I I enjoyed. I made a lot of good mates. So, and it was also a time where I didn't feel any different to anyone else. Yeah. Because my cousin was down there at the university that I lived at, and she was always including me in sports and stuff like that. She was always finding ways to include me. So everyone around me was like, "Yeah, no, Skye's no different."
You were just normal.
Yeah, let's just throw it out. Yeah. So I think as I said, I think for the first 12 years, I didn't think I had a disability. And then I think ever since then, I've sort of fought the disability industry in a way, because I don't see myself as any different.
Yeah.
I suppose in a way my life I split it into two because, yes, I was born with a disability. And then I came home and I worked for a government department and worked at a winery at home, crashed a few motorbikes, much to my father's disgust and dismay. He had to repair a few over the years, but
Disability didn't really stop you.
no. I've never I've never seen myself as any different. I I have a weird view on life in that I think I always say to people, I'm lucky in that I was born with a disability, so I don't know any different.
Yep.
So I don't know what it's like to walk in a straight line, except when I'm highly inebriated. I can actually walk in a straight line, funnily enough. Don't ask me how, but
Well,
I
at
can.
least you've got one up on most.
Yeah, exactly. I can. I actually can. I said to a bouncer once, I'm like, he tried to kick me out. And I said, mate, you can't kick me out. Once I can walk in a straight line, then you can kick me out. Because he was completely confused by the situation. So I just walked away. But then becoming an amputee, I now know what it's like to have had something and lost it. So I used to think that I was lucky because I didn't know what it was like to not be able to walk straight, not be able to run, not be able to drive, all of those sorts of things.
So you've got those two different perspectives
so
now.
I've got those two different perspectives. So
what led to your leg being amputated?
So
Sorry.
that's all right. So as I said, I started working out at the local hospital here, and working in mental health. And back probably, all my life I've always been on some form of painkiller. But by 2011, I was taking any and every drug I could find. My hip had completely. So when I was born, both of my hips were dislocated at birth. The one on my right side, where majority of the spina bifida effects, was literally sitting right up under my rib cage. It had gone right out and was sitting right up under my rib cage. So I had a 10-centimeter difference between my legs. And my hip had completely, I was taking anything and everything I could get my hands on just to stay on my feet. And we'd seen many surgeons, both in Australia and in New Zealand, and I'd spoken to a few in America and stuff, and they were all, there's nothing we can do for you. All we can do is get rid of the hip joint to get rid of the pain and allow your leg to fuse to the pelvis, which would have meant I was going to end up in a wheelchair, because it would have meant that I had no function in my leg, because from the knee down I had no function, or not much function. And so then I met this surgeon in Sydney who I no longer speak to, but it then ended me up on a roller coaster of the next 15 years. So we did the hip replacement. He then looked at me and said, we need to do something about that leg. And I was like, yeah, no, we don't. And he said, oh yeah, I can get you out of pain. I can get you off the crutches. I can make you walk properly. I can do all these things. And, as someone who'd spent their life in pain, someone dangles a little gold carrot in front of you, you're going to go, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
So it led me on this roller coaster of the next 10, 15 years, where we did multiple surgeries on the leg, from leg lengthening to ankle fusions to rods and plates. And ultimately, back in 2016, 17, end of 2016, they did an ankle fusion, and ankle fusions are not known for success rates. There's a reason that they don't do them very often, because they're not known for success rates. And mine ultimately failed. Part of it was due to a physio, part of it was due to my makeup. And then in beginning of 2017, I started getting blisters and things in my toes, because my legs were the same length. So because I had a drop foot, my foot was dragging through, and my toes and stuff were dragging through. So I was getting blisters and stuff. And I ended up with maggots in my toes
Oh dear.
Yeah, that was entertaining. That was good fun. I've been told they're clean animals. Still don't really believe that, but I'll take that. Anyway, I remember the day clearly, like it was yesterday. We went down to Sydney and I knew, like we all knew what was going to happen. We just needed it confirmed. Yeah. So anyway, I'm sitting in the surgeon's little waiting room, and there was a girl in there who had played some sport. I don't know whether it was netball or something, and she'd hurt her knee. Anyway, she'd hurt her knee. And she was there because she needed she was high level sport. So she was there because she needed a complete knee reconstruction. And she was, going on about it. And I'm sitting there going, you've got a bad knee and you hurt it playing sport. And I'm okay. So I had to go for a walk. I said to my brother, because one of my brothers I'm very, very close to, and he came down. He comes to everything with me. He's one that I'm allowed. He lets me punch him if I'm in a bad space. He will let me punch him and do things. Anyway, I said to him, I need to go for a walk. And he said, and he looked at me and he said, righto. And anyway, he said to Mum, we're going for a walk. I'll take my phone. Just let us know. And I remember sitting in, then went for a walk, came back, and I remember sitting in the surgeon's office. And there was another surgeon there who I got very, very close to. He's a really lovely bloke, and I'm still close to him. He was standing behind me, and the surgeon said to me, he's like, I've just had someone in here who's hurt their knee, and I knew exactly who he was talking about. And he said, and she wants me to fix everything for her and make it all better and everything else. And he said, and I'm about to give you the worst news in the world, and you're happy with anything I do for you. And I'm like, yeah. And so I still, yeah. And I remember walking out of that appointment, and I collapsed in the corridor because I felt like I'd failed because I'd spent 40 odd years, 35 years at that point, fighting just, to stay on my feet. And I remember driving home. I have a really close physio friend here in Orange, and I messaged her on the way home because we were supposed to have a physio appointment the next day. I messaged her and told her what had happened, just so that she knew the next morning when I got in there at 7:00. And the next day I went in there, and up to that point, everyone had been giving me all this advice. I'd been getting phone calls from mum, dad, boys, anyone that knew, had been like family, cousins, they'd all been ringing me saying, oh, this is the best thing, this is that thing, all the rest. And I got to the physio appointment, and Jane and I were doing the physio. We got to the end of the session, and Jane was helping me put my shoes back on and things. And she said to me, I'm really sorry. And I said, what for? And she said, I didn't know what to say. And she said, so we've had a really silent session. And I said, that's the best thing you could have ever said.
Yeah.
I said, silence. If you've got no advice, if you've got nothing worth, as the saying goes, if you've got nothing worth saying, don't say it. Yep. So I suppose, that's where the amputation happened. It was 10 years of my life I'd like to have back. Yes, I met a lot of people like one of your previous amputees, Paula, who possibly saved my life one night. But yeah, so I've also got osseointegration as well. But yeah,
that is just so lovely to hear and to have that connection. Because we don't appreciate it as the hosts. We speak to Paula as herself, and we speak to you as yourself, and to know that you two have leaned on each other, that is really, really special.
Like, I had a really bad night one night. I remember after the amputation, I kicked my parents out. I told them to go home because, like, as much as my parents especially, we've grown up with me with a disability, they don't seem to get it at the same time. And I remember Mum saying to me the day after the surgery, because they came in and removed the bandage and everything became very, very real, and I was throwing punches at anything and everything, and I found out a couple of days later that they'd given me enough Valium to kill a mallee bull, but obviously didn't work. But yeah, then a couple of days later, I got back up on the ward, and Mum and I'd had an argument because Mum said to me, I thought you said you'd accepted this and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I also said to you I didn't know what my body was going to do to me. Anyway, I kicked mum and dad out, and I remember one night I was looking for anything and everything to walk away. And there was a really lovely nurse that both Paula and I know, who is no longer with us, but she came in and we were just talking, and she's like, I've got this person I want you to talk to. So she rang her, and Paula and I we spoke for the next hour about just stupid stuff. And then over the next couple of days, she was just messaging and just, like doing that whole hour thing that she was talking about and that sort of stuff. And it is very, very true. I think, you need to sometimes just break shit down and not
And
overcomplicate.
something that you just said was, I don't actually believe that anyone knows what you're going through unless they've been through it themselves, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's
100%.
an amputee. No, they can try and understand or they can be sympathetic, but they don't actually get it.
I'm a big believer in, I will not give advice because I will not take it.
Yep.
Because I do not know what, like, we all go through similar stuff, as you said, but everyone's reaction to what we're going through is going to be very, very different. There is no rule book. Christ, I'd like it. If someone ever finds a rule book, I'd like it. That'd be good.
I think we all would.
Yeah, I think we all
cheat
would.
sheet on life.
100%, 100%. So
what I've been, sorry, Skye,
right.
what I've been hearing throughout this is that you had a lot of humour and you have a lot of humour, but I also feel like there's a dark side somewhere where, is the humour covering what you really feel?
Yeah. My humour, my father and I have a very whacked sense of life. We've always been able to laugh about shit when it's gone wrong. And now one of my brothers, or both my brothers, especially one brother especially, he and I can laugh about stuff and just get on with it. And mum, not so much. I had an older brother who died just before I was born, so mum goes through the whole guilt thing, and as much as I try to, it's not, but it's just one of those things. So I think that comes with having a disability as well. You have to have that humor. You have to have that dark side to you to be able to just go, you know what, just get on with this and just keep going. Because I think yes, that has been a big part of my life, is that my dark side, and probably I like to call it my brick wall, has possibly saved me at times. Because they have, like, as I said, my spina bifida, no problem in the world, but my amputation and subsequent the osseointegration, it causes me more problems than my spina bifida ever will. But it's bigger.
Is that because, as you said before, you didn't know any different growing up with the spina bifida, whereas now with the leg, you've had the leg, and now you've lost it?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think that's a big part of it, that you sort of, I don't know, it's like losing a part of your identity. And I still, like, I know, like, come July, I'll be 8 years down the track. I'm still fighting that battle. And I probably will for a very, 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 very long time.
So do you feel like it just happened yesterday? Like you relive it over and over? And what, we all go through that what if moment. What if I'd done this?
Especially in July, and also because I have a lot of people around me who still believe that what that surgeon did was the best thing for me. And they still believe that the sun shines out his rear end, which I don't. And it at times does hurt me when those people that are close to me still believe that what he did saved my life.
Yeah.
Especially when he's still walking around. And
exactly. And that's the thing. I'm just like it, and I suppose that's sort of led to where I am now in trying to, because I look at all the things I've gone through in my life, whether it's school, whether it's trying to, like, I've spent years trying to find jobs, and now that's probably why I'm working for myself, because there's so much. And the thing is, the words inclusion and the words diversity and all the rest get thrown out like they're their bathwater.
Yeah.
Thrown around like their bathwater. And I'm at the point now where I'm just like, can we stop talking and actually start doing? I look at all of these strategic plans and stuff that they do every year in every state government department, and every 5 years I'm involved in the one for New South Wales. And every 5 years we are having the same conversations about the same strategic points.
Nothing changes.
Nothing changes. And I'm like, at what point are we going to go, you know what, we've ticked that off. Let's move on to the next thing. And I think that's a really sad thing that we can't seem to, like, we're having all these conversations and everyone's, oh yeah, it's out there, it's out there, it's out there. It's like, it's not changing.
Yeah.
It can be out there, but we actually need to see some action.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's interesting. I went to a meeting a couple of months ago with the all of the state emergency services, you know, with because they were talking about the floods up in the North Coast, and the outcomes of that and things, and looking at different ways to, you know, better help people. And they said at the end of it, because I was the only person there with a disability, and there was no one else. Also, there was no one young as well. So they mentioned that at the end and said, why can't we get people with disabilities to the table, and why also can't we get people young to the table? And I'm like, because you don't listen. Because I feel like a broken record. I feel like I'm saying all of this stuff and you are not listening. Like, it's sort of, you know, like I sort of said to them, I'm like, you know, every time you have a conversation, I said, you know, you look at, for example, you look at government, state government, and they have their key strategic things that they need to do. And I said, and somehow in the last 10 years since the inception of the NDIS, disabilities has gone from being number 2 to being number 7, because everyone believes that because of the NDIS, everyone with disabilities covered. I said, so therefore, it's not. I said, it hasn't fixed it. And I said, for example, yes, you guys had the floods up in the North Coast. I said, but we had floods out here. Molong was wiped off it was nearly wiped off the planet. Eugowra was literally wiped off the planet, was literally wiped off the map. And I said, and there's a lot of elderly people in these communities, elderly and people with disabilities. I said, so what happens? I said, and I know a few of them that were lucky that they had family members who could get them up into their roofs. What happens if they don't? I said, for example, I live on my own. So what happens if I can't get up into the roof? I said, so you guys, I'm the last one you think about, yet I possibly should be number 2 or number 3 of who you think about. So it's sort of, yeah, that's the most frustrating part for me, I suppose, with the conversations that are going on around at the moment. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the answers. If anyone's got the answers, I'd love to know them, because I feel like a broken record, and I'd love to have a different channel to talk about those, in a way.
It's
Look,
all
100% agree, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. We want to hear your voice and how we can try and change things one conversation at a time. We know how hard it is. And you talk about people, you know, the states have literally gotten rid of all their supports, disability supports. We're seeing numerous children kicked off the scheme for these
100%,
foundational supports that literally don't exist.
No, they don't exist. And that's the thing. It's just like, can we actually put these things in place? Like I as I said, I work in the system as well. And and I'm exactly the same. I'm seeing people's plans torn up in front of them when they're not actually up for review anyway.
Yep.
The NDIS is just going in there, looking at their plan, not talking to them, not doing anything, just tearing it up. And so it's like, how can you do that?
They're not being held accountable.
No, but we've also got major providers who are not being held accountable.
Look, 100%. We all agree that there's rorting and everything.
100%. And there's no answers to it. There's no answers to it until they, because we've got a major provider here in Orange who's just been brought up on criminal charges. and there's no answers to it until government or, system wants to stand up and make these guys accountable and actually say to them, you did the wrong thing, shut your door. No one's going to change this. No one's going to change.
Yep.
And also we find one of the biggest things is the conflict of interest. You've got a company that offers absolutely everything. Of course, they're then going to be in the government's ear and they won't want to shut them down.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know how big your company is, but certainly for us as a small provider.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's a really tiny provider, and it's just me.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, you can't compete with that.
You can't.
And it's getting to the point now where I'm actually walking away from the NDIS come July when we're told that we need to register and stuff. I'm actually walking away from it.
Made that decision.
I've made that decision. I'm in the process of handing off my clients at the moment because I can't, like, both as a provider and as a user, I can't stay in the system because it is so broken. And I'm like, you've got so many people that are using and abusing the monetary system that we've got. Yet what you're doing in answer to that is actually cutting people's plans who actually need the help.
The support.
So, how about you just cut the people that are doing the wrong thing and not cut the other end? But it's the same with we had, I don't know if you guys heard about it. We had the Richmond report here in New South Wales.
Yeah, I do remember something.
It was mental health. It was a review of mental health. And they did the exact same thing. Because I was working in it, they cut middle level management, and then they cut a heap of the supported living arrangements that they had. So that a lot of the houses where people who couldn't integrate back into community went and lived after they got out. So they cut those. But then 10 years later, what creeps back in? Middle level management. But the thing down the bottom that actually helps people isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So, you've started that roller coaster again of people ending up back out in mental health facilities and, doing.
So that's a really good time then to ask the question, what does the future hold for Skye?
At the moment, that's up in the air. It's between things at the moment because, as I said, I'm walking away from support coordination. I'm having enough battles with the NDIS myself without having to fight other people's plans, and that's just a personal thing for me. I need to make the.
You don't have enough energy for all of it.
No, exactly. I need to make the decision between the two.
Yeah.
And at the moment I'm, as I said, working for Sport for All, and sort of creating those inclusive spaces is something that I love. Funnily enough, I don't play sport. Never have wanted to. I've tried a few sports. I dislocated my shoulder a couple of weeks ago trying to hit a ball, wheelchair tennis.
Excellent.
I get a little bit competitive. I get a little
to your own detriment, I'm sure.
My own detriment. Everyone will say it's my own detriment. But yeah, so it for me, I also want to try and remove the barriers that I had growing up, whether it was school, workplace, all of that sort of stuff. I want to try and make the next generation a little bit easier for them.
Yeah.
Life's not always going to be easy, and God, I don't want to make it completely easy for them, but just that little bit, that they know how to navigate it. So I'm looking at doing things like doing a little bit of education around for both people with disabilities and also providers in terms of how to, advocate for yourself, those sort of topics. I'm looking at the moment at doing as you mentioned before, just a resource where, it's mentioned all of the places that you can, if you want to come to Orange and the Central West, these are the places that are accessible that you can go stay at. These are the wineries that are accessible, all of that sort of stuff. And just trying to work with businesses to try and bridge the gap for employment. Because I had a meeting with someone with a bigger organisation, and because I'd been approached by one of their managers saying, oh, you know, I head up disabilities in our organisation, and I can't seem to get anyone with a disability to apply for any jobs here. And I'm like, well, there's things like driver's license that you don't really need for all of your jobs, yet you've got it for every job. So it's, you know, someone like me is not going to apply for a job with you because I see driver's license and it's just not going to bother. I said, so there's things like that. And he's like, oh, can you meet with our HR team? I was like, yeah, sure. You know, I met with their HR team and they were like, oh, yeah, we can do that. We can do that. We can do that. And I started, you know, they said, oh, so, you know, and she said to me, how would you get paid to help us? I said, oh, as a consultant, possibly. And she said, oh, I thought you'd get funding for that.
So they weren't going to pay you?
No, I just walked away and I was like, I just sat there and I was like, I know I might have a disability, but I want more than a cut lunch, thanks.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem, is that people see people like me and go, you're passionate about it, you want to change it, you're going to do it for free. You'll do it for a cut lunch. You'll do it. We can take we'll take you to the pub and we'll get you a can of lunch. And I think that's part of the problem, is that they automatically see someone with a disability and go, you know, and I think the NDIS has kind of created part of it, that they're like, oh, you're just using the system. You get money, you're just using the system. Yeah. Which I think is very, very sad, because there's a lot of people out there, and I've met a lot of people over my life that would give their right eye tooth to be able to have a normal life. And they're some of the nicest people in the world. Like, they're some of the happiest people in the world. And I've met people walking down the street who supposedly have nothing wrong with them, but they've got a bad back and they think the world's falling around their shoulders.
The end of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And I know it's all perspective, and I get that, and I have to remind myself of that sometimes, because I get very cranky when things like that happen, and I see people getting left out because, you know, someone's made. And it's the same with me. Like I said the other day in this presentation that we did, I'd actually like it if I had an invisible disability, because then someone would have to actually explain to me why they didn't want to employ me.
Yeah.
Whereas I walk in and, you know, within the first, as we all know, within the first 6 seconds, you know how they feel about you. And I grew up pretty proud, independent little shit. Excuse the French. My parents would say that. My brother both my brothers would say that, especially. But I'm getting to the point now where I'm just like, you know what? Why is it getting so hard? And I don't get it. Like, I would have thought in 2025 that things would start to, you know, with all of the conversations that we've been having for umpteen years, that things would, you know, get to a point where we're just like, you know what, everyone's, because I'm a big believer in everyone gets a seat at the table.
Yeah, everyone has value. Everyone has a value add to anyone's life. It doesn't matter. And we talk about it a lot where, you know, it's seen as a disability, but it's not really a diss on anything. It's everyone has different abilities, whether you've, you know, you're fully functioning or you have, you know, one leg. We all have something to give in this life.
And I think, unfortunately, when it comes to disabilities, like I say to a lot of people, I'm like, my lower half may not work as well as someone else's. But my top half, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
No different.
I look at you and I sit there and go, before I even knew that you were a support coordinator, I could very easily employ you in my company.
Yeah.
Your legs actually don't matter to me.
And that's
it's your brain that I want.
Yeah, and I think people see someone with a disability and just automatically go, yeah, your brain doesn't work. I think they automatically go to that. Like I remember at school, going back to school, I had a teacher, and I possibly shouldn't have done what I did, but I did it anyway, and it's done now. She knelt down in front of me. Like, I'm 5'2", like I'm short, so I'm particularly short, and she actually knelt down in front of me to talk to me. I walked off. I let her kneel down, actually get comfortable kneeling down, and then I walked off. Possibly shouldn't have, but, you know, it was kind of funny because it was right in the middle of the quadrangle at school and everyone saw it. So it's kind of entertaining, but,
Didn't go down very well.
It didn't go down very well. I kind of ended up with a Friday afternoon.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
I kind of ended up with a Friday afternoon.
So what can people do differently, whether they're employers, whether it's just society? What can people do differently to make your journey easier, to make a disabled person's journey easier?
Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. I think, like, we were having this conversation with Sport for All, and like, people look at sport, for example, and they go, oh, we've got to create this entire different program and a different team, different group so that people can actually play the sport. It's like, actually, no, you don't. Have a conversation with the person and see how you can make them fit. Like, I heard a story the other day. There was a young kid in Queensland who wanted to play AFL. He's got cerebral palsy. Now, the club didn't create a completely different, separate situation for him, division, whatever. They, at the end of it, they add an extra 10 minutes to the end of the game. They put a pair of red shorts on him so that people can see him on the field. And those red shorts mean that he can't be tackled hard. But they just add an extra 10 minutes at the end of the game. Doesn't make any difference to the game. They still get their full, they still get their full 80 minutes, whatever it is. But he gets to play with his mates.
Yeah, for 10 minutes.
I think, for that 10 minutes. And that's the world to him. That means the world to him, because that's a whole game for him. Like, that to him is a whole game. And I think that's the thing. Don't look at it and think we have to create completely separate environments for people. If you have a conversation with someone, I'll tell you what I want. 9 times out of 10, I'll tell you I don't need anything. But I think that's the thing. I think people are scared of having that conversation, and just say, hey, what do you need in order to have a seat at this table? What do you need in order to be able to work here and all that sort of thing? I think also people look at, say, access, for example, because that's a big thing when it comes to workplaces and stuff, and they think it's expensive. I don't want you to change your whole building. Maybe put in a removable ramp. If you've got a step at the front door, you can go to Bunnings and get a removable ramp for $50. Like, there's the whole flexible workplace thing, all of that sort of stuff. I think that's possibly something. Like, just have that conversation. Don't automatically jump to.
Don't assume.
It's in the too hard basket.
And don't exactly. Don't put it in the too hard basket, because I think that's where a lot of organisations go that I've had conversations with, where they're like, oh no, that's just too hard. It's like, well, actually, no, it's not. Yes, okay, I grew up with a disability and I've had it since day one, so I don't see it as hard. But there are ways we can make it simple, cheap, easy. You can learn something out of it, and the other thing is, you employ someone with a disability, you get someone for life. You get an employee who's going to be dedicated to you. Like, I worked at Health for 12 and a half years. I left Health and I had, I think, about 4 years worth of sick leave. I had about probably 12 months worth of annual leave that I hadn't used, all that sort of stuff. And you're also going to get a born problem solver.
Yeah.
Because most of us have solved 15 problems before I've walked out my door.
We hear that over and over throughout all the podcasts. Is that it's not expensive to hire someone with a disability. And as you said, the exact same words, and you'll have an employee for life. If you treat them well, you treat them properly, just like you would any other staff member, because of what they've gone through to get there.
They will stay. They will do
stay.
it. Yeah, they will bend over backwards. They will do the shittiest jobs. Like, I had one of my first jobs when I came home. I worked at our local council for a couple of years, but as a casual on call. And I had a manager there he's still a great mate of mine now. And he's been a mentor to me over the years, but he did exactly that. He sort of was like, let's just create a space and whatever happens, happens. And he said to me when I left, he's like, I don't want to lose you, but I've got no funding to keep you. But he's like, yeah. And that's the thing. I think people completely underestimate the value of employing someone who's got a diverse experience, as most of us do, as all of us do have in life, but most of us do have and most of us, as I said, are born problem solvers. Like this morning, I had 4 goes at trying to put my leg on.
Yep.
And that's the sort of it's sort of that, you have to constantly be, and it was one of the things that came out of the meeting the other day, the thing I did the other day. I, was saying to people about how, if I want to go somewhere, I will spend 4 or 5 hours before that actually investigating where I'm going, making sure I can get there, making sure that seeing if the stairs to
somewhere to park and how far do you have to walk
and stuff like that. I'm like, people don't think about that sort of stuff, but someone like me does. So therefore, if you employ them at work and you've got a problem, they're going to find you 15 different answers,
solutions.
They'll find you 15 different solutions, and not just the one solution. Whereas, you go to work and you say to someone what's going on, they'll give you a problem. They won't give you the answer.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm probably
my question for you, Skye, is: are you looking for a job?
Yeah. What are you offering, Kate?
Well, at this stage, support coordination. But let's see what the future holds.
Yeah.
There's lots of irons in the fire.
We'll discuss that offline, hey?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you'd be an absolute asset in all areas, to be honest.
Thank you. But yeah, I think it's sort of just treat them like, the old adage of treat me the way I treat that you want your grandparents treated.
Yeah, it's just respect at the end of the day. It's pure respect.
It's simple.
Yeah.
It's like, if you walk up to someone and you've got a person with a disability and you've got a carer, have a conversation with this person. Don't have a conversation with this person. If this person doesn't have an answer, yes, have a conversation with this person. But first of all, start having a conversation with me first. And because I hate the word expert, but I'm the expert on me, as we all are.
Yep.
And I think that's one thing that we forget in this busy world, that we need to go back to simplicity. And that's why I love kids. Like, I've got 5 nieces and nephews, and they are my world. They've definitely changed my perspective on the world.
Because they've got that innocence, right? There's no judgment there.
There's no
filter. There's none of that.
There's wonderment.
Pure love and adventure.
Exactly. And they take you for who you are. Like, to them, I'm only Skye.
Yep.
And
they wouldn't change you one bit.
I'm the fun, stupid auntie who's willing to just do anything.
Who surfs off hill hoists,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I wear pants everywhere, and as I said, I'm an amputee, but I wear pants everywhere. So not a lot of people know I'm an amputee, and it's got me into trouble a few times over the years. But one thing about kids is we went to Hamilton Island for my mother's significant birthday, and we stayed in two different villas, and I stayed with the one brother that I can punch and things, because he and I are very good together when it comes to climbing hills, like climbing stairs and stuff. Like, he just literally throws me over the shoulder, but he does it in a safe way. Okay. But anyway, my nephew, who was 4 at the time, came running up the stairs. He's like, Auntie Skye, where are you? I'm in my room, Harry, because he was going to bed. He wanted to say good night. And I was like, oh, shit, I don't have my leg on, because I was in the process of getting changed and everything else. Came running in, and he looked, and he just looked at me. Anyway, his mum just came up, and she grabbed him and took him away. And I heard him say, what happened to Auntie Skye's leg? And she's like, it's okay. She'll talk to you in the morning. We're going to bed. And he's like, night, Auntie Skye. And I was like, night, Harry. Talk to you in the morning. Anyway, she came back and she said, I just told him that you broke it and you'll talk to him in the morning. I was like, yeah, sweet. Anyway, the next morning we got up and I said to him, Harry, you want to come and sit on the couch and we'll have a bit of a chat? Anyway, he sat down and I said to him, Auntie Skye's got this really special magic trick. Auntie Skye's got an Allen key and she can take her leg on and off. I said, but only special people know about it. Not everyone knows about it. I said, because if I try to take my leg off and they're not special, it won't come off. Anyway, it was funny because my brother then came into the room and Harry leans over. He's like, Auntie Skye, does Daddy know about your special magic? I was like, no, Dad. I was like, no, Dad doesn't know about my special magic trick because Dad's not special. Anyway, next thing, Harry yells out across the room, Daddy, you're not special to Auntie Skye. Anyway, he came over.
And that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
And that's the beauty of it. That they just, they just take things like, like I've told kids before that, that I didn't read the sign on the territory that said don't go swimming with the Crocs. I did have one parent say to me that was really not necessary. And I said to him, well, it's giving your child a lesson. And he said, what lesson? I said, the lesson of reading and writing, the importance of paying attention at school. I said, that was that lesson. So, but that's the thing. They just take life simply and they don't look at you any differently. And like I've got one nephew, he's like my little shadow and he'll walk around with me and he'll pick my crutches up and he'll make sure I'm okay and all of that sort of stuff. But it's not for any other reason than he just wants to be with me.
Yeah.
And I don't know where we go wrong, where we get to high school and we start judging. And it's just really sad.
Yeah. I think it's people not having the involvement. They're not seeing it. They're not touching it. Not that I'm saying we should go around touching disabled.
Oh, no, 100%, yeah.
But they're not, and I was one of those people.
Yeah.
I was never involved in disability growing up.
No.
There's not enough education either. There's not enough education around it.
No, there's not. And I think, in a way, Kate, I was too. Because as I said, for the first 12 years of my life, I didn't. And probably for the last, I don't know, up until probably 10, 11 years ago, I've fought the disability industry. Yeah. I've fought against it. I haven't wanted to be part of it. Yeah. And I haven't wanted to admit that I was any different to anyone else. Because I don't see myself as any different to anyone else, except for when I got asked if I was going to have a running blade when I became an amputee. Which was an entertaining conversation. I'm like, not every person wants to be a marathon runner. Thank you. So,
but they are pretty good looking things, though.
Oh, they are. But it's interesting that it is interesting in rehab. It is true in rehab. You generally get asked by at least one person, when are you going to get your running blade when you become an amputee? It's pretty true. But yeah, I was like, I didn't run before I lost my leg. I'm not gonna and all my friends say to me, if we ever see you running, there's an issue. There's a really good reason for that, and we possibly should be with you. Possibly.
We need to worry.
You need to worry. So, but yeah, I think that's the main thing is just treat people like you would treat your own family.
Yeah.
Treat them with respect. Just ask the question. Like if it's a kid, I probably won't, as I said, wouldn't tell 100% the truth. But if you want to know the truth, I'll give you my story, warts and all. I think it's also hard in the virtual world we're in as well. I had a job. I worked at our local TAFE just after COVID, where they would, how during COVID, a lot of people window shopped for things to do.
Mm-hmm.
TAFE courses was at the top of that list. So there's a lot of people that got into TAFE courses and then needed withdrawing and all that sort of stuff. So I worked at TAFE, and I'd had the interview had been virtual. So there was no question about my disability and anything. Anyway, so I turned up on the first day, walked in, no one knew that I was on crutches. And they were like, oh my God. So they rang my supervisor, who was sitting in Port Macquarie at the time, and said, we've just had Skye walk in, she's on crutches, and we don't know what to do, and we're this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, I'm fine. Like, it's
my desk.
I'm like, if it's going to be an issue, I would have said something. Anyway, we were talking. Anyway, Susan and I were talking a couple of hours later because I had to ring her because I had an appointment in Sydney the following Friday with my prosthetist. And it just rolls off the tongue for me that I've got to go to Sydney, pick up some parts for my foot. prior to that, didn't even know I was an amputee, didn't know any of that. So I picked the phone up and I'm talking to her and I said, just letting you know, I've got a pre-existing appointment in Sydney. I've got to go down and pick some parts up for my foot.
And silence.
And about 5 minutes later, I rang back and I was like, oh, I got off the phone. I was like, oh God. So I rang back and I was like, Suze, by the way, I may be on crutches, but I am also an amputee, just so you know. And she's like, oh, thank God you explained that to me. She's like, I didn't know what's going on. But that's the thing, like for me, I don't, because I wear pants everywhere, a lot of people don't know I'm an amputee. And for those around me that have been around me for as long as I've been an amputee, it also rolls off the tongue for them. Like I work with a girl at council whose sister is my best friend. And she was sitting in a meeting the other day with all the managers and had said to them, if you see Skye walking around and she's having trouble with her foot, it's because she forgot to charge her foot this morning.
Oh.
They were like, what are you talking about? And
Well.
she's like, oh, she's an amputee. But they didn't know. But that's the thing. I think we get to a point, and I need to stop myself sometimes when I say it to people, because I'm like, you don't know that, and I possibly need to explain it a little bit better. But I think that's also part of the scared factor for people, is they don't know what's going to come.
Yeah.
But someone like me who just wants to be part of the world, I'll explain it in the most simple fashion I can. Like I'll make it as simple for you as I can. I'm not going to give my whole story. I don't.
And you don't have to.
No, exactly. I'm not going to give you my whole story. Like, so don't be scared that I'm going to give you my whole story. You're not going to get from go to woe.
Yeah.
And as I said, most of us have already got a solution for the office. Most of us already know what we need, whether it's a step. And like, because I went for an interview at a local financial planner, and I was in the interview and he was all keen. He's like, yeah, I really want you to come work for us. And, I don't want you at the front because I think I could use you elsewhere. And you've got so much knowledge about finance and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, sounds good. And I said to him, look, I am going away for 2 weeks. He said, well, ring me when you come back. And he said, we'll set something up. I rang, and this is one of the reasons I want to try and change things, is I rang and I know he was in the office because I spoke to the reception girl and I could hear him out the back. And they said, oh, we'll get him to ring you back. Didn't hear back from him. 2 days later, I rang back. And I know, again, he was in the office because I heard him say it. I just tell her, well, I'll contact her later. And at 5:05 that afternoon, I got an email from him saying, sorry, but we've decided to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I know it was because he saw me going down the stairs. There was 2 steps at the front. And, yeah, I don't look the most unawkward. Like I look pretty awkward going downstairs. I've got it figured out. I'm safe.
Yeah.
But I think people see that and I think they automatically jump to the whole shit, that's not safe. And we've got, that we need to make all these changes and there's work health and safety and all this sort of stuff.
It's not accurate.
I worked in work health and safety for 7.5 years. Go figure. But when I was at health, they put me in the work health and safety position, and everyone used to laugh because they're like, "You're the first and last person we'd possibly put in that position." I'm like, "Yep, possibly." But that's the thing. I think people they're scared. And I get it. They're scared, but they're scared of something that is part of life. Because, in all honesty, any one of us can become disabled at the drop of a hat.
Yep.
Like, this is the one, and this is the part that hurt, that makes me the saddest, in that as I said, we can join. It's a club that you can have. I'll give you a gold card. I'll give you a bloody membership card at any point. You want a membership card? I'll give it to you. I will welcome you. Most of us will welcome you with open arms. We'll give you whatever support you need. Anyone in the disability sector will give you whatever support you need, because we've all been through it. But on the flip side, you go out into the real world and we're the most discriminated against. We're the ones that get told, you can't have access to that, or, go and sit on the DSP because you can't work, it's just too hard, all that sort of stuff. And I think that's really sad because it's something that anyone can get a membership to at any point, whether it's permanent or temporary. Like people have broken a leg, they're disabled for 6 to 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is. I think that's really sad that we segregate from that reason.
Yeah.
I find that sort of hard to swallow because of the fact that it is something that anyone that can be part of it. It can become part of anyone's life. Like you get older, you become.
And you know that if that unfortunately does happen, their attitude will change like that.
100%. That's exactly right. They'll want everything. They'll be like, oh no, this is, and I think and I also think as humans, especially as adults, we are really, really silly because we don't realize what we had until we don't have it anymore. Like I was at a place down in Sydney a couple of months ago, and we're in the ocean, just in this ocean pool, and there was some blokes there, and they were highly inebriated, jumping headfirst into this really not so deep ocean pool. And about 5 minutes up the road was a respite place for spinal injuries, with the big sign out the front saying "So good spinal respite," And I'm like, have a think for 5 seconds, because your life will change in an instant, and it's not just your life; it is everyone else's around you. That you're having 5 minutes of fun now, but think about. And we had 2 guys with us at the time who were literally floating in the water. Like they were literally, from there down spinal. And I'm like, how do they not see it? And I remember looking at Kylie, who was with me, the rec girl that was with me from So Good. I remember looking at her and I'm like, how can they not see what we've got with us? And I think that's sad that we don't realize what we had and how good we had it until we don't have it anymore. And I think that's made me, losing my legs probably in a way has done one good thing for me, in that it's made me realize, you know what, tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Yep.
And it's made me realize that, you know what, just take every moment, that whether you're spending it with kids or whatever, just take every moment as though it could be your last moment.
And just live your life to the best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't overthink things. Don't try and second guess yourself. We all make mistakes. We all wait for that perfect moment to start something. Just start it. Going back to the sporting world, I think a lot of us look back, we look at, working with a couple of state organisations and clubs and stuff, and they're trying to set up programs, and I'm like, yet they're not rolling it out, and I'm like, they're like, oh, we're just trying to get it perfect, and I'm like, don't worry about getting it perfect. Just do it. I said, because someone's going to turn up. Doesn't matter if you get it wrong. You can get it wrong. You can keep getting it wrong 4 or 5 times. As long as you're trying, someone like me who hasn't had an opportunity to do that is going to keep coming back. And I think that's also in life, I think that's the silly thing, because we wait for that. We wait to have everything perfect. Like when we're starting a business, we wait to have all our ducks in a row before we pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And say we're going. And I think we're all going to make mistakes. And as long as you learn from those mistakes, you'll succeed. And I think just that'd probably be my one bit of advice, is one, probably, or 2 bits of advice would be, one, it's okay to ask for help. Now, people are probably going to listen back to this, and a lot of friends of mine are going to listen back to this and go, you suck at answering. You suck at asking for help.
You suck at following your own advice.
Do not give that bit of advice. And I was like,
do what Skye says to do.
No. It's a do as I say, not as I do.
Correct. Yes.
That's a do as I say, not as I do moment. But don't be scared to ask for help. There's been times in my life where, and I can think also on the flip side, as someone without a disability, if you walk up to someone and say, hey, can I help you? Don't get offended
if they say no.
Don't get cranky if I say no, because before you, I've possibly been asked 15,000 times that day.
Yeah.
I think, but don't be scared to ask for help, whether you're disabled or not. I think we all need help.
Yeah.
Some form or another. And I think, especially when you go to disability, you become so goddamn independent and so stubborn, and because you just want to get through that. It can be to your detriment. But yeah, don't be scared to ask for help. And I also think that,
what's your second thing, your last thing?
my last thing would be just, as I said before, don't wait.
Yeah.
Don't second guess yourself. And I suppose to add to that is, if you knock on a door and it gets shut in your face, keep knocking.
Or knock on the next one and the next one and
Yeah,
the next
exactly.
one after that.
Keep going, because eventually someone's going to go, possibly you'll end up knocking on one of our doors or something and go, and I'm going to say yes. And I think a lot of people, when they're, especially in the disability world, when they're looking for jobs and stuff, they get umpteen number of no's. So they get to a point where they're like, you know what? No, I'm not doing this. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And so I think, just because you're eventually going to find that great fit.
Yeah.
For every 15 doors that shut, you'll find one great fit, and that will be the fit that you will thrive at. And I think also, don't, I'm, as you guys know, guilty of this. Don't underestimate
And
yourself.
I was just going to wrap this up, Skye, with that exact comment of every single thing that you have said.
Yeah.
You need to look out for yourself, because I have absolutely thoroughly enjoyed
I've loved
last
the story.
hour and a bit conversation. You have given us so much knowledge, so much understanding that we didn't have before. So please do not underestimate yourself. There is so much potential there for you. You've got so much stuff that no one else has got. So, thank you so much for joining us today and for speaking to our listeners. I'm more than happy to put up your links and so forth for what you're doing, and people can reach out to you, because you have been so easy to talk to.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Skye.
much. Thank you for your time. Cheers,
Thanks,
Kate. Thanks, guys.